Okay guys, welcome back. Today we're gonna learn low air flare. Now this is a move a lot of people want instead of the more higher ones. But you have to first be honest with yourself. Are you willing to practice a lot? If you're not, forget about this, learn the other way, or even forget about air flare, right? In any case, on air flare you need to be willing to practice a lot. Really often I see people train air flare. Man, they try it 3 times in the training on a mat somewhere and then they forget about it, right? That doesn't work. So you really have to buckle down and practice. But this move is quite possible to get at least one quite fast. The problem is more the multiples instead of the one, right? So what do you need for this move? Well, just like the other vid, like I said, be very comfortable on your hands, right? Have a good handstands and grab and all these things. It's a little best it's less necessary here to have perfect handstands, but it's very important that you have a good flare and a good windmill, right? If you don't have those 2 moves down, it's going to be very hard. It really helps yet again to learn the halo, because the swing of the halo is way more similar than the swing of the flare and the windmill. But if you can't do halo, it's not really necessary. And the last thing is you need to know the New York flare, which I already did a vid on. I actually did a vid on all these moves. But you don't have to watch it because I'll explain it right now. All this is, instead of starting with flare like this, like normal, right? We're gonna start it from the power move entrance. And when you do the power move entrance, try to rotate fully in. Now I already did a vid on air flare. In that other one, I'll put the link in the description for that one. But I said, look guys, don't enter with the power move entrance because you lose control. In this case, we sort of need it to gain speed. So all we're going to do is that New York flare and try to sort of perfect it to the windmill. So it's New York flare to windmill. Let's try this right now. So as you can see, mine isn't clean. This has 2 reasons. One, I need to basically work a little bit more on flare, but the most important reason is this is soft floor and flare really hurt my wrist on this one. But like I said, try to just clean this. At the very least, as you work on air flares, also try to work on this. So we got it sort of more or less down, and I suggest sort of getting in the mood to always practice your flare like this. I don't like how that looks, but it's a great exercise to get it right. So after we get the New York flare down, I did a tutorial on it, but you don't have to watch it, you get the idea, right? You need to enter the same as you do a windmill from standing, or the same as a swipe from standing, but then flare instead. So once you get this down, let's get to that air flare. Now here's the little trick. We're gonna do the same New York flare, but we're gonna keep our hip on this height. So my shoulder's over here when I enter it, and I have to make sure my hip is at this height, and it needs to stay at this height the whole move. Now let's just do that right now and see what happens, right? So just do the New York flare like normal, but keep the hip higher. What happened? I did the air flare. That's because the air flare is actually an elevated flare. An air flare, right? So if you do the flare way higher, basically on a higher angle than your head, but not much higher, because otherwise there's no point in doing this air flare, you will get the air flare pretty much. So if you got that down, like if you understand this, you need to practice this a couple of times to get that feeling. But as you can see, I'm just crashing, right? So here's the trick. When you enter this move, you need to, when you do the flare like normal, you try to do a flare. Think of the flare, but stay higher, and you need to wait. So the most common mistake with air flares, especially in this way, is like for me personally, in the way I normally throw air flares, because I throw a different way, right? I did the tutorial. I just on the hand and can just immediately chuck if I want. I can wait a bit if I want. Doesn't matter for me. But for this method, you need to wait till your body is in the front. So it's like, okay, I'm here in what's normally the flare, and here I switch the hand. If you're too early, it's going to be very heavy, right? And that's the tip number 1. So you just enter the New York flare, you stay higher, and before you switch the hands, try to really be at the front and don't let your body fly over before that. And another tip, and this is the most important one, is you need to hop. So when you do this and you have pure speed and pure power, you will probably make it. You will probably go to the flare again, because like it's just an elevated flare, right? So you just drop down and flare. Or you can go to the windmill, which is a really good exercise, but your hip drops. So it's very hard to do 2. So here's the trick. When you enter this move and you are almost at the front, you need to push. And the push is similar to how you do hand-ups. The push is also similar to how you do chair flares. So if you have chair flares, you're really in luck. Try to think like this. It's like a chair flare, but way higher, right? And you push over to the other hand. If you have this push, you will make a little jump. And that will make the landing lighter. Now then, the other thing is when you land, try to keep the legs really open. It's often a mistake that your legs sort of close in the air. So, well, if you can already do flare to hands and flare to 90, this is the same feeling. You don't just do a flare, but you do the flare to this move right here, and then you drop, right? So, yeah, that's the way. If you do all that, you get it, right? The problem is the continuous, but let's first show you guys really quick how that looks. I do this to the elevated flare. I wait a little bit till I'm at the front, right? This leg starts kicking like a flare, but then I push really, really hard. So let's do that right now. Sort of like that, right? So when I do this, you see my hip drops quite a lot. This is simply because this is not my method of airflare, but back in the day I did over 3 in this method. The problem was I did over 10 with the other method. So for me it was sort of like, yeah, I can practice this but I already have airflare, but it looks way sicker, right? Especially for like, a lot of times I see people start like spinning handstands, and that's not even wrong because over time it gets better, but this one looks dope straight up, right? So that's the big plus side. Also a big plus side is this is easier to combo with flare and windmill because you don't have to be so high. But that aside, this method is really for people who have a good flare, obviously. So after we did this, how can we get multiples? Well, I'm going to tell you the trick for me. The first trick is really do multiple air flares in one combo. So when you do it and you drop into flare like I just showed you, try to go from the flares back to the air flare if you got that skill. Now, since you know it's just an elevated flare, it's really a matter of, okay, I need to be higher in the back and keep that height to jump into the air flare again. Don't forget to push. But actually, that's not the ideal method. The ideal method is actually air flare to windmill. So when you can do the air flare to the windmill, like because I don't do this air flare, mine isn't too clean, but you sort of want to do that combo first. And just like the flare to windmill, you will learn to sort of hang before you drop down. But you will also sort of learn to lift the hip a little bit. And now here's the trick. You need to have this down on the level that you can land on 2 hands at the same time before you drop into the windmill. If you're still like, if I try it now, I'm probably like this, right? Very low. That's because I don't practice this air flare a lot, and you sort of need to get it down on 2 hands. At this point, you're high enough for the second air flare. Another trick, like I said, is just doing multiple combos till you really feel high and do it. You know, and this is, if you have an awesome flare, like really, really good, this will come quite fast, right? Just do a second one, even though it feels like a flare. But yeah, get the air flare to the windmill down and clean that till you sort of feel like, hey, I'm on 2 hands before I start dropping. And your hands need to be straight, obviously, not something like this, right? At this point, we're actually ready for the next air flare. But yeah, guys, that's actually all there is to it. It's a lot of work. If you have a lot of trouble or you're not willing to practice, like, even if you, like, forever you need to practice, but you can sometimes better off learning the other way, which I would link in the description. For me, that's way easier also. I feel that's just the method that really works for me. But this looks very cool. Obviously, it's easier to combo. Also, in this method, you can easier learn 1.5 air flare actually. So it's a little bit up to you, but if you're not willing to work at it, or at least don't have awesome flares, this method is probably not for you. But let me show you guys air flare to windmill now, because that's the combo you actually need and not air flare to flare. The reason is because if you learn air flare to flare, which is a natural combo since it's an elevated flare, is you learn to dip your hip down. So basically, okay, I do an air flare, and now I just do a flare. So I just place my hand and dip my hip down for the flare. But you want to keep your hip high. That's why the air flare to windmill is a better combo to learn. And just use the flare, the swipe, whatever move to continue back to air flare many, many times. So you got these skills down. Multiples is going to be very hard. Obviously, if you have an awesome flare and you can do flare 90s and stuff, this becomes a lot easier. So yeah, guys, take a look. Air flare to windmill. More or less like that, right? So mine isn't too clean, as you can see. That's simply also a lot of, because you need to practice. Also, I really suggest keeping this air flare lower it somehow is easier if you do it like a flare, like literally like a flare, like I do, because there's many ways to air flare now. A lot of people found ways. It's not that, it's the higher you are, from the more higher angle you have to catch your flare sort of. Also, one last tip is, this is a mistake I made when I was practicing these. If you watch my other tutorial, you see me do air flare, you see this. Air flare, just stick that freeze like nothing. I could really, boom, land like that. But sadly, in this method, that doesn't work in the beginning, because you need to think of a flare. And flare, if you do full power flare, just try to stop in the air, in the middle of the air. That doesn't work, right? So that's why you need to sort of combo all the time. Don't think of, okay, I'm going to do the air flare like this and stop, because it doesn't work. You want to do the air flare to windmill. Air flare to windmill, air flare to windmill, flare, flare, air flare to windmill, like that. You will get used to it, and it looks awesome, right? Even if you do one air flare in your combos, this looks straight up awesome. If I see a spinning handstand air flare, like I said, it's not wrong. Eventually you will learn it, right? But it doesn't look as good, especially in the beginning, right? So, and plus, like I said, it's better to combo this one with windmill. So windmill air flare is easier. Flare air flare is also easier in this method, because you don't have to lift so high, right? But the learning curve is higher, so like I said, if you don't have good flares, if you don't have good windmills, forget about this one. See you next time.